Hello and welcome to our third marriage marathon vlog. I'm Paul.
And I'm Alison.
And our theme today is a different pace. Now, one of the challenges that we've found as we've been running together is that we both run at a different pace. Alison runs a little bit more slowly than me.
A lot.
No judgment there, it's just the way it is. Alison runs differently and we find that quite challenging. Mindful that there is a 6-hour time limit on the Manchester Marathon before they start closing the roads and throwing you off the streets. I've been trying to nudge Alison along and just increase the pace a little bit, and that's been challenging for you, hasn't it?
Just a bit.
So today is the day after the tough run yesterday.
The day from hell.
Yeah, and the schedule says we should do a 5k, just a kind of easy run today to relax our muscles, and so that's what we're doing. It was a really tough run yesterday, and we're a bit discouraged, or I was, but we actually managed to still get round in 3 hours 12 minutes, which is 14 miles after running into the headwind.
It wasn't a headwind here, it was storm.
Storm something.
Some storm.
Yeah.
Something, and we were at halfway. We were on schedule. We were actually under our target of 3 hours, but by the end we'd gone 12 minutes over because it was just, could barely stand in it, never mind run forwards or move forwards in it, and there were lots of uphills, so it was much tougher. That's the longest run I have ever done in my life at 14 miles, but we did it, and actually the time was better than you thought it might be, wasn't it?
We had to walk about probably 10-15 minutes of it, so I think we've learnt a lot from that. We've also realised we need to do much more stretching, and we've got some exercises to do for the kind of weak points that we both feel we have, and where we felt really that we were struggling at the end of the run, so hopefully that will help as well. So we've learnt something from that tough run yesterday, and let's hope that the stretching and all the proper gear helps us and less wind next time. So we'll just finish this short run and catch you later.
Because I'm a bit of a tortoise and I just keep plodding along. I don't do speed, whereas you're a much faster and fitter runner than me.
But it's also been challenging for me to adapt to your pace because I'm using different muscles, different stride pattern. I've found it quite difficult running for longer than I normally would over those kind of distances. So I've been struggling as well, and we've both struggled to adapt in different ways. But what we've realised is if we want to run the marathon together, we're going to have to be able to adapt. So Alison needs to speed up and build her energy a little bit. I need to get into a rhythm that suits Alison's pace without going too quickly. And that's something that we're still working on in our training.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's definitely challenging, but we're getting there. We're working our way on it, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And it reminded me really of some of the work I do with clients where they often struggle to accept differences. So it's actually a common phenomenon where couples come for therapy, and one of the issues is this, that there are differences and they're struggling to accept it. Often what happens is one person sees that their way is the right way, and then they try and convince their partner that they should be thinking and behaving in a way that is the right way. And obviously that's not necessarily helpful. So is being right more important than doing the right thing for the relationship, or at least being right in your own head more important than doing the right thing for the relationship? So in most safe relationships where there's no form of abuse of any kind, it can actually be really helpful if we can listen to why the person wants the other person to change, whether it's changing their thinking or whether it's changing a particular behaviour. And then once the person actually can get it and understand it more, they can actually decide whether, for the sake of the relationship, it's better to make some adjustments, like you and your running and me having to speed up and you having to slow down, or whether actually it's too big an ask and for their own valid reasons it's like, no, actually we just see this differently and I don't want to change it. But if they aren't addressed, these small differences can actually over time in a relationship build and lead to really big conflict where you get patterns of defensive and polarized behavior. So it's just not helpful at all. And in fact, we had early on in our relationship
we're going to tell a story about the shoe trees here, aren't we?
We are going to tell a story about the shoe trees here. So early on, I've got a thing about shoe trees, and some of you might be thinking, what on earth are shoe trees? Some of you might not even know what they are. They're those things that you put in your shoes, and it's wider at the bottom, and then there's a springy thing, and it's designed to help your shoes last longer and keep them in good shape and keep the creases out and everything. So when we got together, I kept saying to Paul, why don't you put your shoe trees in? Well, he didn't have any, so I had to buy him some. And even then, he kept not putting the shoe trees in. So I kept saying, why aren't you putting your shoe trees in? And Paul kept thinking I was a nag and I was criticising him. And it became a real issue. And it wasn't until one day he said, why is it so important to you, for you, to put shoe trees in my shoes? And so I explained, partly it was a practical thing, they make your shoes last longer, money was tight in the early days, but more importantly, it was actually an emotional issue for me because my dad taught me to put shoe trees in my shoes. It was a family tradition, and so for me there were these fond memories associated with putting shoe trees in shoes. And so Paul really got that. It made much more sense to you, didn't it, as to why I kept getting so cross and upset when that didn't happen. So we learned to accept each other's positions. I finally got it that putting shoe trees in wasn't as important to Paul as it was to me. It wasn't his story, it wasn't his family tradition. And so I sort of got to learn to accept that. And Paul really understood why it was so important to me. So between us, Paul does actually use shoe trees more than you did. And I accept that's just how it is. And I'm thankful that he took it on board and he does try to do that, knowing how important it is to me. So that's just one silly example, really, of where we had really different positions on something. It went on quite a few years before we addressed it, and I'm so glad we did, because also we then learned to develop a pattern of addressing where we had different ideas and either working together on it so we were more comfortable, or just accepting we were different. So we adopted a position where doing the right thing for the relationship was more important than being right.
So, thanks very much for sharing that story, Alison. So, there you have it, adapting to a different pace, and don't forget to put your shoe trees in. Thanks very much for watching this, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.